Violence calls for more violence. Blood calls for more bloodshed. When you shoot down an innocent protester, they now prepare for more violence. Would you want to be remembered by how many people you killed or how many people you saved? Violence kills what it was meant to protect. So we urge you tonight, please take your work with the sacredness it deserves and the sanctity of life. Seek to protect, not to kill. And to our judiciary. We live in a country whereby only appointed officers are supposed to interpret what justice means. Laypersons like me and you are supposed to assume every judgment made in the courts of law is Solomonic wisdom. You see, in a kingdom, the king decides what justice is. In a democracy like Kenya, our appointed judges decide what justice is. Then how ironical it is for the same judges to pretend there is manipulation from the executive. I know that was the case for many years, but I beg to differ with the promulgation of Constitution of Kenya 2010. I submit tonight that what we're lacking in this nation is judicial leadership. We have a situation whereby the judges watch political campaigns from a distance just to wait for the electoral disputes. You see, we act in a disjointed, mechanical manner dealing with national issues. I challenge the judiciary, wherever they are, whoever can hear our voice, this is the high time you went into the streets and corrected public perception about the judiciary. It is time you got out of your offices and courtrooms and reassure the country that we can peg our trusts in our courts. What we need in Kenya are not more electioneering laws. What we need in Kenya is justice. Kenya does not need more charity. Kenya needs justice. Where justice is denied, poverty is entrenched. Ignorance prevails. Where one class of people is made to feel like the society is a conspiracy to rob, oppress, and degrade them, then neither persons nor property will ever be safe. While equality will never be achieved, equity must never be compromised. I suggest our judges need to transform our courts of laws to courts of justice. In Kenya, justice has been incidental to law and order. But at the long run, the only way to achieve sustainable peace is where justice guarantees law and order. When we reward effort in politics, in business, and in career, then we attain national stability. What we need in this nation is judicial leadership towards electioneering processes. And this takes me to the role of the legislature. With the bicameral parliament in Kenya today, we've never had such a bloated parliament. Regrettably, only a few parliamentarians are awake to their duty. And what we are seeing from the main presidential contenders, none of them seems to be willing to concede. And I challenge our MPs to look at any loophole in electioneering for possibilities of legislation and fix it beforehand. And then demand presidential candidates to make public commitments before they are cleared by IEBC that they will accept the results and the verdict of the voters as announced by the referee, IEBC. But the real question tonight, can we trust our MPs to help us not to change goalposts in the middle of the game, when they themselves have been specialists of changing goalposts? It will never be lost in the mind of Kenyans that the 11th Parliament, and in particular the National Assembly, bullied her way into unregulated income and threatened to disband SRC, the Salary and Remuneration Commission. You have contributed to the inequalities in this nation, and therefore you've been a threat to national peace. I tell you as MPs tonight, the God of all justice will not always be impatient with legislative injustice. And this takes me to the role of the executive towards a peaceful election in Kenya. And maybe I should first say, all the governors and the CECs many times behave like they are part of the opposition and they are part of the executive in the counties where they hail from. But first, as Sense 11 Life Club, we said our condolences to the constituents of Nyeri County, and in particular the family of the late Honorable Derito Gachagua, for the demise of their governor, their father, and their county fellow men. But we have a word for the president of this nation. Mr. President, we recognize the role you played, your utter determination and relentless effort to move Kenya forward. As we congratulate you, we must also note that runaway corruption has reached an all-time high in this nation. Some of us suspect that the major reason this has happened is that, Mr. President, you've been preoccupied with 2017 elections throughout your presidency, and therefore no one around you could be held liable and accountable for runaway corruption. Mr. President, I remind you tonight, while many politicians around the world focus on the next election, great leaders focus on the next generation. While all of us as the country, individually, corporate, the business sector, are responsible for a great nation, Mr. President, the buck stops with you. In essence, what this means, security in Kenya, food, economy, health, and a peaceful transition from power to the next leaders, a peaceful election, are all squarely on your two shoulders. That's the job you applied for. President Harry S. Truman in 1945, when he took over the oath of office, the first thing he did is to put a sign on his office saying, "The buck stops here." I take full responsibility. There is no blame game. We can't have a situation where the president blames anyone for corruption or for insecurity. That said, Mr. President, let me assure you that majority of Kenyans pray for you daily. God's favor rests on you. Don't disappoint him. This takes me to the role of our opposition leaders. The tremendous job they have done is undeniable. The opposition leadership in Kenya has put the government on its toes. They have saved this nation millions of shillings, and they have raised the conscience of the government of the day. We congratulate them. Perhaps we should have renamed opposition leadership to alternative leadership. Because right now, we have a scenario where some opposition leaders oppose anything government, almost every single policy. They fight every nice idea, some of them. And we wish to remind them, you'll never be remembered by what you destroy. You'll be remembered by what you build. We challenge our opposition leadership to be grounded firmly on convictions rather than mere power games. We urge our opposition leaders to reach out to the executive and find out whether there can be a common ground during this election. We refuse to believe that we have an unreachable executive in Kenya today. Any inability to reach out to the executive is not structural, but egos, male egos. We need to let them down and allow the country to reign. We urge our opposition leaders to reach out to their supporters and assure them there is a fair ground for the sake of the greater good. Where your personal ambitions compromise the national good, we urge you let go your personal ambitions. What is true for our opposition leaders is also true for the executive. Do not allow your personal interests compromise millions of lives and properties and destroy dreams of our children. And not only to opposition leadership, but to all those who are aspiring for elective positions. Do not harm your opponents. This is somebody's father. This is somebody's mother. This is somebody with dependence on them. Why become a tool of the enemy in destroying them? Focus on your manifesto and how to reinvent yourself, to repackage yourself and sell yourself, rather than focusing on your opponent's strategies. to the civil society. You played a major role in Kenya in enhancing the democratic space. You've kept the executive on check and balance. You've interrogated the operations of the legislature. You've checked the execution of justice by the judiciary. You've educated a nation on civil rights. We are better off with your interventions. But some elements amongst you have been puppets of foreign manipulation at the expense of our homeland. Some because of personal gains, but others because of foreign interest. Most of you in the civil society derive your inspiration from Martin Luther King Jr. Let me remind you that Martin Luther's dream was anchored on the American dream. He was true to his identity. He never betrayed who he was. You must remember you are Kenyans first. You must never betray that cause. Where your interventions compromise the national good, please let go the foreign interest. Do not be used in the disguise of civil works to cause mayhem in this nation. Some of you have even gone to our schools, sneaked in their selfish agenda to corrupt the minds of our young children. Please understand there is no other place on this planet you can have a permanent citizenship except your homeland. Put your country first. Honor Kenya first. To the working class majority who are in this live audience, let me tell you this. We have a number of Kenyans who don't need to work for a single day. Their investments offshore can sustain them for their entire life. Many of them are decent Kenyans, but some of them can burn the nation and leave. You know, the central bank only guarantees 100,000 in respect to your deposit, and the reason is simple. Because 94% of Kenyans do not have any consistent deposits of more than 100,000 shillings. That tells you 94% of Kenyans cannot live a normal life for 6 months if we went into flames. 6 years ago, Syria went into flames. Russia and China have refused to sign sanctions against the Assad regime. Meanwhile, 450,000 lives have been lost, and 50% of pre-war Syria's population, 12 million in absolute numbers, are now scattered all over Europe and Middle East. At the meantime, President Assad is enjoying the goodies of State House. Neither side is concerned with civilian casualties. This has happened to many nations. Our immediate neighbor has been like that for over 3 decades. Don't be cheated that this cannot happen in Kenya. We haven't known, some of you, since the day you were born, we haven't known a stable Somali. And an unstable Somali has been a threat to the stability of Kenya. While you want to avoid getting into the murky waters of politics, I still want to remind you the words of Martin Niemöller. During the Second World War, he said that, I quote, "Evil prevails when good people do nothing about it." They came for the socialist, and I didn't speak because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionist, and I didn't speak because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak on my behalf. End of quote. If you try to navigate through this life on a safe itinerary, you'll always bear the burdens of a corrupt government and failed structures. This country rides on your back. It is built on the back of the working class. I urge you to reach out to your neighbors and send this peace message. I urge you to desist from political undertones in your places of work. I urge you to reach out to our youth in your neighborhoods, in your churches, in the villages where you come from. and reason with them peace at all costs. And to the business community that is here tonight or will ever listen to this video recording, I believe there is something you can do in this election. I believe you can play a lead role in shaping the model of a nation. Safaricom in particular has tried to shape the driving behavior and even the pedestrian behavior of their employees. And I believe this has cut down road carnage in Kenya. We can borrow a leaf from that and apply it in every facet of our nation's history. As a business community, refuse to employ people just from your community. Integrate Kenyans in that place based on meritocracy. As a business community, organize weekly meetings, reason with your employees on what must we do to ensure a peaceful election. As a business community, sponsor some adverts on our TV, saturate the airwaves with messages of peace, sponsor caravans of peace, peace walks. Let's see people get into the streets as part of your corporate social responsibility. I know in the medium term and long term, the stability and success of your business depends on the political stability of your immediate environment. To our young men and women, our youth, university students, now you are young adults. You are entitled to universal suffrage. Let your voices be heard through the ballot box. When you fail to vote, you get the government that you deserve. Admittedly, at times after you vote, you do not get the results you expected. This then should tell you some of the politicians are just having a rhetoric. They don't mean what they say. Which then begs the big question. Why harm someone playing as a pawn in someone's chess game and then deliver victory to the king on bloody hands for peanuts in return? Suppose in this election we realize that the two kings will still dine together and they will ride